Hey World History, welcome to U15-L5, Basics of World War I, Part 3. This is the last lecture video for World War I stuff, until we get into World War II, which is next week. Then we'll have a lot more videos, isn't that exciting? So your job, you're going to watch this Edpuzzle, answer the questions. Questions I will ask you during the video today will be in blue text. Follow along with your study guide. Important concepts will be in red text, so make sure you're writing them down. Of course, if you have any questions, please let us know. That's why we're here, is to help you. Learning target describe the social, political, and economic causes and consequences of World War I. So today we're going to kind of talk about the closing of World War I, kind of the end of it. So one of the big stepping stones to the end of the war was actually Russia withdrew from World War I. So the main reason for this was because there was a lot of civil unrest throughout Russia. By March 1917, there was mass starvation, there was a fuel shortage due to the war, and 5 million soldiers were either dead, hurt, or they were a prisoner of war. Also during this time, the very famous communist leader Vladimir Lenin takes power of Russia. That happens in November of 1917. So in order to end the war, he makes a peace pact with Germany. It's called the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, and this ended World War I on the Eastern Front. So, with the Russia's withdrawal from World War I, the Central Powers then take their focus and move all the troops to the Western Front. So remember, the Western Front is where France and Germany are fighting right on the border. So May 1918, German forces reached the Marne River. And I know we talked about the Battle of Marne River last time, and it's still critical even towards the end of the war. Like I said before, it's about 40 miles from Paris. And of course, if Central Powers take Paris, the war is done, okay? Because Paris is like the main headquarters for France. Once that falls, the Central Powers would take it over. But that never happens. So a reason why that never happens is because the German army is severely weakened. The German soldiers are exhausted from fighting. So by this time, they've been already fighting close to 4 years. Supplies are also running low on the Central Power supply line. U.S. troops who only entered the war a year before this, so back in 16, 17, they are ready to go. They're still ready to fight. They're energized, okay? They're the opposite of what the German army is. They're not sick of war yet. So 140,000 U.S. troops launch a counterattack at Marne River against the German army, and this would become known as the Second Battle of the Marne. So another thing that had the advantage for the Allied powers is that the U.S. had 350 tanks that absolutely destroyed the German lines at Marne River. And there was 2 million more U.S. troops that would come and join the battle. And this would cause the Central Powers troops just to retreat. They knew they could not win. So, since the Central Powers are weakened, the World War I starts coming to an end. So by September 1918, Bulgaria surrenders. October of 1918, Ottoman Empire surrenders. Also that same month, Hungary breaks away from Austria. So now they are 2 separate countries. You can see here on the map the breakaway. So you have Austria up here, Hungary is more down in here. So, also by October of 1918, there is a mutiny among the German soldiers. And a month later, Kaiser Wilhelm II is forced to step down as the leader of Germany. So this pretty much triggers the very end of the war. So German representatives and French commander Marshal Foch meet in a rail car near Paris. Here's a picture here of that rail car and of the men. They sign the armistice of 11th of November 1918. And what an armistice is just an agreement to stop fighting. It doesn't necessarily end the war. It's just saying, hey, we're going to stop fighting, and pretty much is the final stage before the war officially ends. So World War I was put on hold, meaning the Allies did win World War I, but of course, at what price? So, I actually took this one from your textbook. Woohoo, textbook. So this graphic is really nice. It really shows how devastating World War I was to all the countries. So you can see here the US actually had the least amount of deaths, probably because they only fought in World War I for like a year. So they had about 116,000 deaths. Next would be the Ottoman Empire, and then after that would be Italy, the British Empire with about 900,000, Austria-Hungary with 1.2 million, France with 1.3 million, Russia with 1.7 million, but the biggest loser was Germany with 1.8 million of its soldiers dead. That's a lot. So here, I did some math here. There were 65 million troops involved during World War I together from like all sides, all countries. And a total of about 8.5 million soldiers died. So there was about a 7.6% chance of death if you were a soldier during World War I. So there's an armistice, but the Allied countries need to make a treaty to officially end World War I. Okay, so the four main Allied countries meet up to discuss the treaty. And there's a picture of them right here. Here are the four leaders of the big four Allied countries. So they include Woodrow Wilson, which is this dude right here. Okay, he is the president of the United States during this time. After that, you have George Clemenceau of France, David Lloyd George of Great Britain, which I believe is this dude here, Vittorio Orlando of Italy. And you're probably like, wait a minute, Russia was like one of the big players in all of this. Yes, they were. But you got to remember, they're having a lot of civil unrest in Russia during this time. So they pretty much are out of even making a treaty, okay? They're occupied with their own civil war that's going on. And of course, with the treaty, Germany and other Central Powers are not invited. So Woodrow Wilson proposed a plan to create worldwide peace. And this plan became known as the 14 points. I'm sure in US history, when you took US history, you talked about the 14 points. I'll just breeze through points 1 through 13. Number 14, of course, is the most important of all those points. So the 14 points that Woodrow Wilson made include open diplomacy without secret treaties, economic free trade on the seas during war and peace, equal trade conditions, decrease arms/weapons among all nations, adjust colonial claims, evacuation of all Central Powers from Russia and allow it to define its own independence, because remember, Russia's going through their own civil war at this point, Belgium to be evacuated and return of Alsace and Lorraine region and all French territories, readjust the Italian borders, Austria-Hungary to be provided an opportunity for self-determination, meaning that they can choose their own government, redraw the borders of the Balkan region, creating Romania, Serbia, and Montenegro, creation of a Turkish state with guaranteed free trade in the Dardanelles, which is a water port, creation of an independent Polish state, which of course is going to be a big factor into World War II. And finally, point number 14, the most important, the creation of the League of Nations. So, the League of Nations, I'm sure you talked about this in US history, but just to recap, it is an international association. The big goal of it was to keep peace among all the nations. So to pretty much never have a world war ever again. But as we kind of know, that doesn't work out. Also to make decisions together as a world, not just individual countries. And this would be the predecessor of the United Nations, which is the organization that we still have today on Earth. So going back to making that treaty with the big four allied countries, they finally make the treaty for Germany to sign, which would then have the official ending to World War I. This treaty is called the Treaty of Versailles. There are multiple Treaty of Versailles throughout history. This is the one that pertains to World War I. Germany signs it June 28th, 1919, which is significant because it is exactly 5 years to the day after Archduke Ferdinand was killed, which really triggered World War I. So the Treaty of Versailles, there's a lot in it. I'm just going to go through some of the highlights of the Treaty of Versailles. The big one would be the War Guilt Clause. And a War Guilt Clause is literally kind of what it sounds like. It's blaming the war on someone, and that someone was Germany. So Germany was forced to accept full responsibility for causing the war. Germany had to pay back reparations to all the Allied countries of 122 billion marks. So instead of like in US we have dollars, in Germany at this time their like currency is called marks. Germany had to reduce their military to about 100,000 men, and Germany was forced to return Alsace and Lorraine to France, which are two regions that I'll show you on a map right now. There they are. So you're probably like, where are these regions in France and why do they matter? So Germany during World War I took Alsace, which is right here. So Germany had to give that one back to France. Same thing with Lorraine. Germany took it over and they had to give it back to France as well. Another thing with the Treaty of Versailles is Germany had to demilitarize around the Rhine River. So here's a map of the Rhine River right here. So pretty much what that means is Germany could not have any like soldiers stationed around the Rhine River. They had to like leave it not supervised, pretty much. Also, the Treaty of Versailles created new countries. The most important of that would be Poland. So Poland was a new nation state from territory both from Germany and the Soviet Union, and that made Poland, which you can see right here on the map. So again, here is a map of the Rhine River. So you can see here's Germany, here's France. So there can't be any military personnel along this river. All right, and then here, whoops, let's go back 1 second. Here is a map of Europe after World War I. So you can see some of the new countries that popped out. You can see Germany got a lot smaller. All right, so another important factor to the Treaty of Versailles was the Austria-Hungary Empire was dissolved into independent nations. So that included new countries like Austria and then Hungary, and then also Czechoslovakia, which the borders of Czechoslovakia go into the Sudetenland, which was another really important part of Europe because it was rich in resources. So this also led to the breakup of the Ottoman Empire, or at least what was left of it, because it was already crumbling before World War I even started. Germany also had to give up all of its colonies in Africa and Asia, which if you remember from, I think, my first video, that is why Japan wanted to join World War I, because they wanted Germany's territories. So here's a map of all the colonies that Germany have. So you can see Germany's up here. They had 4 colonies in Africa, they had 2 in China, and then they had some islands in Oceania. So let's talk a little bit more about the League of Nations. So the League of Nations ends by the end of World War II, so about 1946. One of the big downfalls of the League of Nations was that the US never joined the League of Nations, which is crazy to think about because Woodrow Wilson, who was the president of the United States, was the one who created the League of Nations, but they never joined. And you're like, well, that's dumb. Why did they never join? Well, it was because the US Congress did not allow the US to join, because the US Congress believed the way to keep peace was to simply keep out of the affairs of Europe. Okay? They did not want to be dragged into another world war. So here's kind of a political cartoon of that. You can see everyone else is on the ship of League of Nations, but America is being held back. So another thing during the aftermath of World War I, a bunch of colonies got shuffled up between European nations, and of course, none of these African countries or colonies had any say in what was going on. Okay, all the European countries made that decision for them without their input. So like I said before, Germany's colonies split up among other European countries, and those colonies were really mad because they thought maybe they would gain independence instead, but nope, they were just taken over by different European countries. So here's kind of a map here of all the not all the colonies, well, some of the colonies, but some of the nations, and if they ever joined the League of Nations and how long they lasted. So like here you can see in gray, the US was never a member, so they never joined. So another thing after World War I was the kind of mindset and like the depression that hit Germany. So the German people felt very targeted after World War I because everyone blamed them for the war. I mean, which that's not wrong. Germany did start World War I, but it really hit the working class people in Germany the most. So Germany could not pay back the 122 billion marks of damage to the Allies. Before Germany had to pay back the Allied countries 122 billion marks after World War I, which today would be about 500 million in US dollars. So here's my question for you. What do you think this massive debt is going to do to the German economy? Yeah, it's pretty much going to tank the German economy. It's also going to cause hyperinflation. I know we talk about inflation in the modern day a lot. This was extreme inflation. Like you almost couldn't comprehend how much inflation this was. So, to put it in perspective, 130 billion marks during the Depression after World War I would equal $1. Think of that. 130 billion marks is just $1. So the marks in Germany became so worthless that people actually lined their houses with the marks and made wallpaper out of it, like this dude's doing right here. Another big part of the aftermath of World War I is France took over one of Germany's biggest mineral resources. So right here is the Ruhr Valley. So you can see that it's pretty close to France, but it is in German territory. France takes that over. They are now mining the iron and other metals out of this area. And with Germany having no major exports, that means they're not bringing in any money in commerce. So again, you can see here's the Ruhr Valley, which is rich with iron. Germany's not seeing any of that money, although it's in German territory. So all of this leads to a global economic depression called the Great Depression. I'm sure you all talked about that during US history, but it didn't affect just the United States. It affected the entire world. And we'll talk a little bit about it when we start getting into World War II. So let's wrap up for today. Today we talked about armistice, George Clemenceau, Woodrow Wilson, 14 points, Treaty of Versailles, and the League of Nations. So next up, you're going to do U15-L6, Diary of a War Nurse reading. That is a primary source reading of a female World War I nurse on the battlefield. She just talks about like the horrors of all the injuries she sees. After that, you're going to do U15-L7, World War I video choice. So there's 4 videos, choose 2 of them to watch. You can get extra credit if you do all 4 and answer them all correctly. Once you're done with that, you can actually turn in your U15-L1 study guide. That's pretty cool. That will be due Sunday, May 12th at midnight. Once you do that, then you can open up U15-L8, which is your study guide part 2. Okay, that's not going to be due all the way until June 2nd. Crazy to think that. So once you look through U15-L8, you can get started on U15-L9, which is another video by me, and I'll meet you back here for Basics of World War II Part 1. And I will fly through a lot of information that day. And of course, if you have any questions, if you have comments, if you want to learn more, please email us. That's why we're here. We're here to help you. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.